somewhere in the humid mountain forests, back before the word breakfast even existed. Something heavy drops out of a tree with a dull thud, straight into the jaws of a giant beast. The beast doesn't chew, it swallows the whole thing, pit and all. And, friend, it's thanks to that sloppy habit that you exist at all, in the exact shape you're lying in right now on somebody's toast. Simple riddle. Who ate you first? Why did that beast go extinct ages ago? And why didn't you? Hang tight, we'll figure it out. Like the video, no rush, we'll take it step by step. But there's a second riddle, and it's even better. How does a fruit, born in the damp mountain forests of one single corner of the world, manage in just a few thousand years to turn up on literally every continent where humans have ever lit a fire? What route did you take, through which ships, borders, empires, and centuries, before landing on the shelf of an ordinary supermarket 6,000 miles from your actual home? So, you were born avocado, not in a supermarket, not in some wellness influencer's Instagram feed, but in the warm, humid forests of Mesoamerica, where Mexico and Guatemala sit today. Hot climate, humid, air thick as soup. Volcanic slopes all around, lush greenery, fog clinging to the treetops. A romantic setting, frankly, to an almost indecent degree. And it was here, roughly 10 to 15,000 years ago, that a human first worked up the nerve to crack open your thick skin and taste that strange, buttery flesh inside. Picture the scene. Some guy dirty, hungry, staring at a weird dark green thing. Yes, a vegetable, don't worry, we'll get to that later. And thinking, well, let's see what happens, he bites in. A pause, and suddenly his face does something between shock and religious revelation. Delicious. Really delicious. Like nature tried to invent butter but was too embarrassed to just say so. But hold on, before we start clapping, let's rewind even further. Because your story doesn't start with humans. It starts with monsters. That's right, monsters. Millions of years ago, when giant ground sloths the size of a city bus and mastodons with tusks as long as your kitchen still stomped across the land, they were your very first fans. An avocado is too big and its pit too heavy for any small animal to swallow whole and carry the seed anywhere. You needed something enormous, something that would gulp you down entirely. Walk maybe 12 miles and, pardon the detail, leave your seed, a nice fertile gift somewhere in a pile of dung out in a valley. Romantic? Not really. Effective? Extremely. It's called an evolutionary anachronism. A reproductive strategy built around a partner that's been extinct for millennia. And that partner, by the way, didn't vanish alone. About 13,000 years ago, right at the end of the last ice age, a wave of extinction rolled across the Americas that wiped out nearly all of the continent's megafauna within a few thousand years. The climate warmed fast, the familiar ice age landscapes disappeared, and along with the giant ground sloths, went the mammoths, the saber-toothed cats, the giant armadillo-like glyptodonts, and countless mastodons. Some researchers add human hunters with effective spears into the mix, a combination of climate change and hunting pressure that proved fatal for the giants. Thousands of species that had evolved over millions of years vanished in what amounts to a geological blink. But you're still waiting for a bus that got pulled off the route 10,000 years ago. That's how your pit lives, huge, heavy, pointless, without the giant animal that vanished along with all its relatives. It should have been a dead end, an evolutionary trap with no way out. But you didn't give up. And that's where a new character walked onto the stage. The very same species whose spears probably helped finish off your old ride unexpectedly became your savior. The creature that had just wiped out your giant friend picked up where the sloth left off and carried you forward. This time not in a stomach, but in a basket, in someone's hands, in plans for next season's harvest. Irony doesn't get much thicker than that. Your killer became your rescuer, and that new carrier was the human being. A few thousand years later, a miracle happened. You got domesticated. The Olmecs and later the Maya and the Aztecs figured out that this strange fruit wasn't just edible, it was valuable. The Aztecs even called you ahuacatl, a word that, let's put it delicately, also referred to a certain part of the male anatomy. Because of the shape, the way the fruit hangs in pairs from the branch, people back then clearly had a sense of humor every bit as juvenile as ours today. You were considered a aphrodisiac. Unmarried girls were forbidden to eat you, not because you were dangerous, but because of what you, shall we say, implied. Imagine that. A fruit banned over innuendo, and long before the Spanish ever set foot in Tenochtitlan, you already had a seat at the most honored table there was, the emperor's. Before Cortés arrived, you were served to Aztec rulers as a guacamole. Mashed avocado with onion and cilantro, the direct ancestor of modern guacamole. Picture it. Long before you were being photographed on toast for Instagram, you were already a royal dish, a fixture of palace menus, not a street snack. Not bad for a fruit that generations later would get written off as poor people's food. Then the Spanish showed up, and as always with this kind of story, it started with wonder and ended in a linguistic train wreck. The year is 1519. The conquistadors, freshly arrived among unfamiliar plants and animals, heard the locals say, ahuacatl, and simply couldn't pronounce it. That final TL sound, natural in Nahuatl, was pure torture for the Spanish tongue. So they softened it, shortened it, bent it to fit their own mouths, and the word became aguacate. Classic colonizer move. Rather than actually learn the local language properly, it's easier to just mangle it into something convenient. That same year, 1519, another Spaniard, Martin Fernández de Enciso, writing from Colombia, became the first person to describe you for a European readership. A fruit that looked like an orange on the outside but turned out buttery inside, as if nature had mixed up its recipes. Picture the scene. A weathered conquistador, sitting in some tropical shade, scratching away with a quill, writing that the inside of this baffling green fruit tasted wonderful. He had no idea he'd just written the opening line of your European biography. But even after that first line was written, your name only got more tangled. The English, landing in Jamaica, took one look at your bumpy, scaly skin and decided you looked more like a reptile than a fruit. That's how you got the name alligator pear, and that name didn't just show up and fade. It spent years locked in a battle with avocado for dominance in English, a genuine linguistic turf war over what to call a plain green fruit. Meanwhile, back in Spain, the word went through one more transformation, this one almost comic. Aguacate gradually drifted toward the familiar Spanish word, abogado, meaning lawyer. Yes, that's right, the fruit accidentally merged with the word for a courtroom attorney. That's the root of the confusion that still exists in French today, where avocat means both you and the person in a suit defending clients in court. No other food on earth has this strange linguistic kinship with the legal profession. Then came the United States, and that's where the story stops being a language mix-up and turns into a full-blown economic drama. In the early 1900s, nobody was growing you commercially in America yet, even though back in 1914 hotels in Los Angeles and San Francisco were paying $12 a dozen for you. Enough money at the time to live comfortably for a week. The problem was marketing. The name aguacate carried that suggestive anatomical association, while alligator pear sounded about as appetizing as an actual alligator bite. Farmers simply didn't know how to sell you to the public, and while the marketers were racking their brains over your name, a blow landed from a completely different direction. On February 27, 1914, the United States officially banned avocado imports from Mexico and Central America. The official reason being a seed weevil, a pest called Hylophus lauri, capable of wiping out entire harvests. The ban held for nearly a century. Picture it. One small beetle shut down an entire international fruit trade for 83 years. While the rest of the country worried about the bug, California quietly seized the moment and basically cornered the whole American market. By the time the embargo finally lifted, the state was supplying roughly 90% of all avocados consumed in the country. The embargo wasn't lifted until 1997, and the deciding factor was research from Mexican scientists at the Monterrey Institute of Technology, who proved experimentally that the Hass variety was resistant to the very same weevil that had once spooked an entire nation. Science literally unlocked a border that a beetle had kept sealed for 83 years. And that's the exact moment your popularity in America began, the climb that's still going today. But while America spent the whole 20th century fighting this long war against a beetle and an embargo, your story was unfolding on a completely different track somewhere else in the world. And it started much earlier. Rewind to the 16th and 17th centuries, when Spanish and Portuguese trading ships first carried you beyond the Americas. First along the coasts, then across the ocean, toward Asia and other colonies. Every new port, every new country, looked at you with the same suspicion as that first Olmec hunter once had. A strange dark green fruit, skin like a lizard's, and something soft and faintly sweet inside. People in tropical Asia, where you arrived much later, had no idea what to do with you at first. Some tried frying you, some just threw you out, assuming you'd gone bad. Picture that, a genuine delicacy, tossed in the trash, just because nobody thought to simply mash you with a fork and add a little salt. Your history is full of these humiliating moments for a genius nobody had recognized yet. And isn't it funny that the very fruit people now line up for at a trendy café was once considered food for the poor, beneath the notice of anyone with money? Wealthy families across Mexico and Central America looked down on you for centuries, just a cheap peasant dish, nothing refined about it. And now, that same fruit sells for triple the price the moment somebody slaps the word organic on the label. People really are strange creatures. First they sneer at something for being too plain, then they pay absurd amounts of money for that exact same plainness, just wrapped in nicer packaging. Today, you travel thousands of miles on refrigerated ships and cargo planes before landing on a supermarket shelf somewhere in Norway or Japan. Countries where no avocado tree has ever once seen the sun you grew up under. An entire logistics empire. Refrigerated containers, ports, specialized ripening rooms with controlled temperatures exists purely so you can arrive on a different continent at the exact moment your flesh hits that perfect texture, not too firm, not too mushy. No other fruit demands this kind of precision timing just for a piece of toast. Okay, now for the best part, the botanical truth about you that millions of people still get wrong. You are not a vegetable. You're not even a nut, despite English calling you avocado, with all its buttery nut associations. You are a fruit, more specifically, a berry. Yes, a berry, the same technical category as a banana or a tomato, just with much better PR. One large seed, flesh around it, skin on the outside, a textbook botanical berry. Say that at your next dinner party and watch the faces fall. Now, some numbers, because you can't tell this story honestly without them. There are more than 500 varieties of avocado in the world. 500. That's more than every iPhone model the company has ever released, combined. The most popular today is the Hass variety. And, there's a little drama here too. Nearly every modern Hass tree is essentially a clone of one single tree, grown in the 1930s by an American named Hass in his own backyard in California. He actually planned to cut the tree down at first, since the seedlings hadn't taken as well as he'd hoped. Picture that. The fate of a billion-dollar industry hung by a thread from one irritated gardener's axe. Hass went on to patent his tree, the first patent ever issued for a fruit tree of this kind, and made barely any money off the licensing during his lifetime, while the industry he accidentally created is worth billions of dollars a year today. Justice it turns out, doesn't always walk hand in hand with invention. Did you know some avocado trees can keep bearing fruit for more than 200 years? Picture a tree that's watched entire generations of people be born and die, calmly producing fruit every single season, indifferent to wars, revolutions, and whatever the diet trend of the decade happens to be. Here's another oddity. The avocado flower is a master of disguise when it comes to sex. It opens first as female, closes up, and reopens the next day as male. Nature apparently decided sticking to one gender at a time was just too boring. And now, records. Because you love breaking them almost as much as wellness influencers love toast. The heaviest avocado ever recorded weighed over 5.5 pounds. Picture that breakfast. You'd need a serving platter, not a plate. Mexico grows millions of tons of avocados every year and is the undisputed world leader. The plantations sit in the state of Michoacan, which locals half-jokingly call green gold. That gold has gotten so lucrative, Mexican avocado exports were worth close to $3 billion in 2021 alone, more than tequila and beer combined, that over 20 years ago, an entire shadow economy grew up around it. Cartels moved into avocado production with the same confidence they bring to drug trafficking, extorting protection payments from farmers, carving up plantations like territory. There's even a name for it now. The Avocado Wars. So yes, friend, your spot in somebody's smoothie has cost people a lot more than money. Now for the chemistry, because it's genuinely impressive. You're one of the few plant foods rich in monounsaturated fats, the good fats that support heart health. You've got vitamin K, vitamin E, folate, and potassium, and you actually contain more potassium than a banana, even though the banana somehow claimed the entire marketing spotlight for potassium. Unfair? Very. But the banana's just a louder marketer. What can you do? The medical case for you holds up too. Studies link regular avocado consumption to lower bad cholesterol and better absorption of other nutrients. You literally help your body pull more vitamins out of whatever else is on the plate, like a free bonus feature. There's also lutein and zeaxanthin, antioxidants that protect eyesight from age-related decline. So you're a snack and a tiny bodyguard for someone's retinas at the same time. Not bad for a fruit that 100 years ago was still considered an exotic curiosity. And here's one more thing. You contain more fiber than most fruits, which means slower sugar absorption and longer-lasting fullness. In other words, you're a natural appetite regulator that was doing its job long before the word detox was even invented. Nutritionists keep swinging back and forth on fats, carbs, and protein. Food trends swing like a pendulum. And you just keep being fatty, filling, and good for you, no matter which dietary religion happens to be fashionable that particular decade. And your culinary range. This is where you really show off. Guacamole, obviously. Avocado toast, painfully obviously, we know. But you go further. Avocado chocolate mousse, where your fat content stands in for butter entirely. Avocado ice cream, avocado mayonnaise, even avocado bread, where you get blended straight into the dough. In some countries, you're eaten sweet, with sugar, lime, and ice, as a dessert rather than an appetizer. Picture the face of your typical avocado toast enthusiast being handed a sweet avocado smoothie with honey instead. Shock, a minor existential crisis, and then pure enjoyment. And finally, some uses nobody eating brunch is thinking about. Avocado oil shows up in cosmetics, creams, shampoos, massage oils. It gets added to soap for its skin-nourishing properties. In some countries, researchers are looking at the skin and pit as biodegradable packaging material, meaning the future of disposable packaging might be hiding in the exact part of you people throw straight in the trash without a second thought. The pit itself even gets ground into a flour rich in antioxidants, though the taste, honestly, is an acquired one. And now, the dramatic turn. The moment your fate collided with the bigger picture. 21st century, California, heat, drought. Farmers started massively converting fields from traditional crops over to you. because demand for avocado toast among millennials exploded so hard that economists started seriously discussing something they called avocadonomics. There was even a joke, not really a joke actually, more of a genuine public statement from an Australian millionaire who suggested young people spend less on avocado toast and more on a house down payment. An entire generation took offense. A whole country argued about it for weeks. One single fruit sparked a full-blown intergenerational fight over values. Picture it. Not a war over oil, not a war over gold, an argument over the right to eat green mush on bread instead of saving for a mortgage. Absurd? Completely. But that's exactly the kind of absurdity that makes history interesting. Then, in February 2022, the drama went fully diplomatic. The United States completely halted imports of Mexican avocados. Not because of a beetle this time, but because of a threat made against a USDA inspector in the city of Uruapan, the heart of Michoacan's avocado industry. The ban lasted only a few days. But what days? Right before the Super Bowl, America's biggest guacamole holiday, when demand for you spikes harder than any other week of the year. The price of a box of avocados jumped to nearly $60 within days. Picture it. One inspector, one threat, and millions of Americans nearly went without guacamole during the biggest football game of the year. This isn't just economics anymore. This is the geopolitics of green mush. And while one generation argued about mortgages and toast, demand for you grew so fast that parts of Chile and Mexico started facing genuine water shortages. Avocado plantations use enormous amounts of irrigation, and local residents complained that their own wells were running dry while the plantation next door stayed green for export. Your popularity is literally reshaping landscapes, drying up rivers, and redrawing the economics of entire regions. Not bad for just a fruit, right? So honestly, isn't it a little funny that humanity managed to build an international economy, smuggling networks, and full-on generational arguments around a fruit that Spanish colonizers once considered a strange exotic curiosity 500 years ago? Isn't it ironic that a fruit once named after a slightly indecent body part now graces the covers of health magazines? And isn't it kind of a paradox that your biggest selling point, fat content, became trendy at exactly the moment humanity spent decades being terrified of fat? People really are strange creatures. First they were scared of you, too fatty, too caloric, bad for you. Then suddenly they decided you were a health savior, because it turns out fat can be good. Classic human behavior. Condemn something out of fear first, then fall head over heels for that exact same thing once it gets a new label. Like a relationship that starts with, "This isn't going to work," and ends in a wedding a year later. And isn't it wild watching one single image, a fruit sliced in half, laid over a slice of bread, sprinkled with chia seeds, flood millions of social media feeds around the world at once? No historical poster, no propaganda campaign from any past century has ever saturated the visual landscape, quite like an ordinary photo of Sunday morning avocado toast. Restaurants in entire cities have rebuilt their menus around you. Cafes that used to take pride in fancy pastries now sheepishly put avocado toast at the top of the menu, because it's the thing bringing in the most orders and the most photos on customers' feeds. And there's a whole industry built solely around making it easier to eat you. Special knives for slicing you open and removing the pit. Tools for cutting you into slices, right in the skin. Even containers, designed to keep you fresh after cutting. A massive market of gadgets, whose entire purpose in life is fighting your natural tendency to oxidize and turn an unappetizing brown within minutes of hitting the air. Picture it. Humanity has invented satellites capable of photographing the surface of Mars, and also invented special plastic lids whose only job is protecting half an avocado from contact with air. That, right there, is the true scale of modern civilization's priorities. And so, jumping across millennia, past extinct giants, past Aztec innuendo, past a California gardener with an axe in hand, past droughts and economic wars fought over toast, you became what you are now. Not just a fruit, a symbol, a status indicator, a talking point, a hero of Instagram feeds, and, at the same time, the cause of very real environmental crises in very real living regions of the planet. And speaking of which, yes, actual smuggling. At one point, demand in the United States so far outpaced legal supply that a full black market for illegal avocados emerged, smuggled across the border like some kind of contraband from Prohibition-era booze runners. Customs agents seized tons of avocados, hidden in trucks under other cargo. Picture the headline, "Millions of dollars worth of smuggled avocados seized at the border." Sounds like a joke. It's not. It's the reality you, green fruit, ended up in, entirely, thanks to your own popularity. And that brings up one last big question. Isn't it strange that a fruit humanity barely noticed for thousands of years turned, in just the last 20 or so, into an object of international trade, organized crime, environmental conflict, and billion-dollar fortunes, all at once? History rarely treats its main characters fairly, and yours is no exception. You went from an accidental snack for an extinct giant to the symbol of an entire era's eating habits, and nobody ever once asked whether you actually wanted any of this fame. Your story isn't the story of a vegetable. It's a story of persistence. You waited thousands of years for an extinct ride and never gave up. You survived being dismissed as poor people's food, bans, innuendo, suspicion over your fat content, and came out the other side as a hero on millions of breakfast plates every morning, the subject of smuggling operations, and the reason behind droughts across entire regions. Not bad for a fruit whose one and only original purpose was being lunch for a bus-sized sloth that had no idea what kind of empire it had just kicked off with one careless swallow. And if this story of persistence hit you harder than your diet held up last Monday, hit like, it's free, unlike avocados were back in 2022. And subscribe, because next time we're breaking down another supposedly simple food, hiding a whole empire of absurdity behind it.